look at what's coming.
I told you it was. Faye, I think you're lying. Okay. So you're down by the river?
Oh, you're looking. Ah. You're posing for the camera.
Well, I didn't drop at the end of the week. Yeah, they dropped like hell.
Where I am. Thank you. Factory, from the articles of corporation and the stock certificates, and she says she has some pictures that sounds like we don't have, so she's promised me that she will make some copies, and I'm sure we've got lots of memories to share tonight. The Historical Society did this kind of a holiday program a year ago on the interurban, and we had so much fun that we're going to hopefully try to do this every year and pick a topic. So if anybody has any suggestions on programs they'd like to see, whether it's one-room schoolhouses or the Heverly Hardware Store. Jayla already did a small program for us on that this summer, but we're open to ideas and topics. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you what we have on the reunion, what history we have recorded. And like I said, as I hold up the items here, we'll pass them around so that people can see them. Those are the things that we were going to show on the screen. Okay. I think maybe the first item we just want to talk about is the picture.
Hold it up or can everybody see that?
The big picture is okay there. One of the most famous industries in Center Point was the Center Point Canning Company. The company started operation in 1906 by a group of businessmen and farmers. The officers at the time were President Whitson Lansdale, Secretary Harvey Heverly, and manager Frank E. Thorpe. Some of the familiar stockholder names from Center Point were the Gilchrist, Wilsey, Zaborski, Arthur, Heverly, Newlands, and Ashlock. The name Brookman and the Center Point Canning Company became synonymous through the years. R.W. Brookman was elected secretary in 1907, and he retained that position until he retired in 1945. That same year, Frank Brookman, which I think was a brother to R.W. Brookman, was hired as timekeeper. Other managers from 1908 to 1948 were E. Bristol, Frank Smetzer, Frank Brookman, and Harry Brookman. The Brookman brothers, Frank and R.W., and John and Tom Hatch, a brother-in-law, bought up all the stock in the years 1921 and 1923 and formed the Center Point Canning Corporation. Harry Brookman joined the firm in 1930 and became the owner-manager in 1946, a position he held until the company closed in 1948. So it started in 1906 and closed in 1948. Okay, the two-story building here is how it first looked. It first operated in that two-story frame building, and there was a small husking shed on the north, and the building, everybody here knows where it's located, right?
Okay.
Over on the northwest corner of First and Central Streets, 1 block east of the present day fire station. And then we have a third story. Okay.
This is the third story.
Yeah, that's the third story. It was in 1911 that the third floor was added. And who can tell me what the third floor was added for? What was done up there?
Nobody's that old.
That's where they took the corn and cut it off the cob.
The cutting, okay. I knew somebody would know.
You can see the elevator
Show-
leading
yeah.
up from the shutter shed up
Careful,
front. too.
hand it-
Yeah, let's
pass
pass
it
them around, okay. This industry touched the lives of many Center Point residents. The business prospered and products bearing the name of Center Point on the label were shipped throughout the United States. Work was seasonal. Canning started in August and would run from 5 to 6 weeks, 6 days a week. To start the season, farmers would contract to buy the seed, which was ordered from Oregon. They started with the white sweet corn and later they went to both white and yellow corn. The selling of the seed was staggered so that it would not all come in at the same time in the fall. The factory manager would check the corn each week to see when it would come ready to be brought into the factory. The farmer would then buy back the husk and the cobs to use to feed the cattle and hogs. And Janet Brooklyn told me that she can remember going with her daddy out to the farms and checking the corn, and she just thought that was really neat, you know, going to all the farms and being able to tell when the corn would come in. High school boys would build boxes for shipping and unload boxcar loads of cans. 2 boys would contract to unload coal for the furnaces. They would unload a whole rail car in one night with $75 per car, which was pretty good back in those days. The canning shift started at 7 o'clock in the morning and continued until the corn delivered for that day was done. Working until 1 a.m. in the morning was sometimes necessary. Often 2 or 3 days of this and you had a bunch of tired and red-eyed people. Many a girl lost a date on Saturday night because some farmer would bring in a load of corn late in the day. Okay, picture number 3. We have two different third story. Yeah, there's this.
This is another paragraph.
Yeah, and then this one, I think we can pass it around too, unless you think that's too fragile. Okay. Okay. And then one of the husking, we should have 2 husking pictures. Oh, I think we only got one, the other one's out of the book. No, here they are. Okay. So Sharon has a picture of the husking crew. The corn was husked by hand and the workers were paid 3 cents a bushel, and I'm not sure what year that was. Farmers who brought corn to the plant would join in the husking while waiting their turn to unload. Later in the years, the corn was husked by a machine that had 18 double huskers that were made up of 36 husking pegs. 2 ladies, I shouldn't say pegs, places, 36 husking places. 2 ladies would feed those 36 places, those machines as fast as the machines could husk them. The butt of the corn was removed and also the husk. They would then move the corn to a cleaning table where the corn was inspected for smut and worms. The ears were pulled and the bad spots were cut out. And I think that's where Sally Hill tells her story of she worked one time cutting the bad spots out. And just as she was swiping her knife, someone reached for another ear of corn and it was a near disaster. After the corn was husked, it would move on to the washer and then up to the 3rd floor. At this point, the corn was cut from the cob by machines. Next, the corn was sent to the silker, where the particles of cob and silk were removed. It then moved to the 2nd and 1st floors, where it was run through sieves, mixed in large vats with the syrup. The syrup was comprised of 3 ingredients. Can we name what they are? Sugar, water, and salt. And salt. That's all it was. The corn would then go to the fillers, who would then send the filled cans to the closers or the cappers. The soldering machine gave the cans a little daub of acid used to make the solder take hold. The cans then went on to the tippers, who filled the little hole left in the top of each can with solder. Then they traveled through the hands of the persons who detected flaws in the cans. The flawed can was set out to be doctored by the hand solderer. Next, the cans would go to the cookers, to be cooked for 70 minutes in a steam cooker at 250 degrees. The corn would then travel from the cookers to the cooling tank to be cooled for 1 hour and 10 minutes. After they cooled, the cans would travel to the packing room where they were placed in cases and stored until the orders were filled. In other words, they didn't have the labels on when they went to the warehouse. I was just wondering if we had. This is a good picture that shows. Of course, the third floor here had, where they were cut, and you can see when it cut off the cob, there's an elevator coming out of the window up there, and there's a 2-story looking bin there. That's where the cobs went in. And over here is the husking, I think the husking shed,
Yeah,
Dale? Yeah. And you said the cooling tanks were out here too, you think?
well, the cooling tanks was between them two, it went out north there.
Okay, like
You can't
on
see
your,
it.
can't see it, like behind the husking building here? On the back?
When you say cooling tanks, there was big crates, probably 4 or 5 feet across, big iron crates, 2 or 3 feet deep. It's put it in, there's at least 2 went in each steam cooker, and maybe 3, just like a pressure cooker.
Mm-hmm.
And they had hoists, let it down in, and the bale top over it. I can remember when they blow the steam off then, when they had to hook, to reach down and grab it, so, and then hook it on, and then they lift up, and then went overhead around to the cooling tank. And then that cooling tank was quite long, and it took about an hour for them to go through. There was a traveling rail, see, and overhead rail, and it took them about an hour to go through the cooling tank.
There you got it.
Hour and 10 minutes.
Huh?
Hour and 10 minutes was what was written, it took to cool.
No guarantees.
Yes.
Good when they come out. Didn't
No.
have the can sealed completely when they put them in the cooker. The reason I asked is I would think that there'd be a danger of them blowing up.
Doc is asking were the cans sealed completely when they went in the cooker?
Well, when I worked there in 31, that solder deal was out. They were sealed just like a can is sealed today. So I don't know about when the solder was there.
Yeah.
But they were sealed and then put in,
And so the heat, they didn't blow up.
Well, you also, the pressure, remember, the outside pressure too. So they couldn't expand because of your pressure cooker. So it-
Oh, okay.
you probably had as much pressure outside the can as inside the cooler.
down in
Then
the,
once it cooled, everything shrunk.
Oh, okay. Sounds good, I believe
Well,
you.
that's what happens when you can, when I can.
See, that's the difference more. I don't think.
Oh, okay.
My mother did.
During the summer of 1906, that was the first year, there were 5,666 cases of corn packed and 77 cases of tomatoes. Tomatoes were only canned the first 3 years. Due to the high acid content, they would not keep. Almost 32,000 cases of corn were packed in 1922, and the factory warehouse was not large enough for storage that year. So they had to find places for the corn. It said that it was stored in the Arnett livery stable, over in the Center Point Creamery, and 12,000 cases were sent to Cedar Rapids in the Cedar Rapids Transfer Company warehouses. So next year, in 1923, is when the 1-story warehouse was erected. And then the next year, a 2-story warehouse. And Tom?
1925, it says in the cement floor.
Okay. Now, are both of those buildings still there? Okay. The peak season, I got 2 conflicting statements. I don't know which one is right. But one of them says the peak season was in 1935 when 85,000 cases were packed. Another source said it was in 1923 when 125,000 cases were packed. So I guess we need to do some more research in our newspapers or find out which one's right. I think it's the 1923 statistic that says there were 112 people employed, and farmers were paid $14 per ton, and they would average 6 tons of corn per acre. The labels were applied when an order came in. The buyer could use his own label or one of the brand names. At first, the labels were put on the cans by hand, and later a machine was purchased whereby an operator turned a crank by hand and the labels were wrapped around the cans. Later, an electric labeler and a box were added so that 275 to 300 cases could be labeled and boxed in 1 hour. That's a lot of cans. Iowa Cream is the brand that we're used to seeing. Let's see. I'm gonna pass these two around. Iowa Cream, these are both white corn and the yellow corn. And also other labels that were used were Mayflower, Only One, Delco, and Prince Harold. Here's one that's harvest time.
It was White Swan too.
Say that again?
White Swan.
White Swan. And then this one just came tonight. Did this come from the Shermans?
Yeah,
Yeah.
came from Tom originally.
Well, yeah. And it says rainbow. And all that you'll notice is on the labels are ingredients: corn, salt, sugar, starch, and water. It says Centerpoint Canning Company, Centerpoint, Iowa. And I think the weight's on the can. And you notice it's 1 pound, 1/2 ounce. And I think that was the white corn. The yellow corn says 1 pound, 4 ounces. While I'm talking about the sizes of cans, Tom Neenan brought this as an illustration. He took, what do you call it, number 2 can?
Right.
Today's can, and he put a label on it, and you see it doesn't overlap here like it's supposed to. And, you know, here's canned vegetables like we see it today, and, you know, they're a lot smaller. Of course, it says 14 ounces. And I took one of those labels and put it around here, and it's somewhere in between these two sizes was what these labels were for. And
I understand that's how they got run out of business, is that the large canning factories changed the size of number 2 can, made it smaller. Charged the same price for it, of course.
sure,
Oh, that's
And
what
when
we
they
do
did
today.
that, they had to change all their machinery and they couldn't afford to do that.
okay.
Also, Mr. Brookman said that they went to kernel corn instead of cream pie. That's why the canning factory here, Benton, Shelburne, and Nebraska went out of business. It's because they shifted to kernel corn instead of cream style.
So all of this was cream style, okay. Okay. We were having that discussion, weren't we? We didn't know. John, is the recorder on? John, is the recorder on?
Oh, it's been on ever since you started.
Okay, so I just have a couple conclusion paragraphs here. The factory ran for 42 years with a large impact on the lives of Centerpoint residents. It was not hard work, but then I think you got some people that might say it was. And many a romance was started over eating lunch in the shade of a tree at noon. Shorty Woods, who ran the cafe, would ring up sandwiches and pop to sell. One worker, it is remembered, ate up more in 1 week than what he'd earned. And I gotta tell you here before I read the last 2 paragraphs, a lot of what I have here, 90% of what I have here, was gotten for us by Dell back in 1980 when he sat down and interviewed here in what, he said 4 or 5 hours one day?
45 minutes.
Oh, 45 minutes?
I
Okay,
have the tape 45 minutes. It was an hour and a half.
so, we're anxious to listen to that too and see what all Dell did not transcribe that Harry had to say that day,
Well,
so.
Harry said that it could not be put public until after he was dead. That was one of the agreements.
And that is amazing that you still found it, Dell.
That is true.
Good job.
Yes, he said I couldn't use it or let anybody hear it until after he was gone.
Well, now I really
Then you couldn't
We're
argue.
definitely gonna have a reunion too, aren't we?
Well, I have to hear about all the fingers and everything that went.
Okay. In the fall, when the cooling tank was filled, the kids in town would go swimming in it. It was 100 feet long and 6 feet wide. And then there's a story, Janet even told me this one. Mrs. Brookman would bring in the beans from the family home to be canned for their own personal use. One year, a set of twins, and I've been told who these twins were, the
Gilchrist.
Gilchrist twins, from north of town, sent those family green beans to the warehouse where they were sold as corn. A steam whistle would blow 1 hour before to tell the workers they had a half hour to get to work. 2 blows meant that you better move it, for there was only half hour left. This was the pocket money industry of Center Point for many people, including farmers, housewives, and high school students. Practically everyone in Center Point had worked at the plant one time or another. This is how people would buy coal for winter and clothes for the kids for school. Center Point Canning Company closed in 1948 after 42 years of operation. Its closing was attributed to increased competition from frozen food lines and the reluctance of farmers to plant the necessary amount of sweet corn to keep the plant in operation. And that was probably quoted by Harry.
Basically what he said was that they switched cream style corn to cool kernel.
Okay. I need to write that down. We're gonna record it, we'll get it written. Okay, now what I'd like to do, I've got a couple of written, I guess only one. Anecdotes and stories. Thea Condon Leslie wrote to me and said, Grandpa Heverly worked there when he was well into his 70s and maybe 80s. I don't remember when the factory quit operating, but I know it was still going when I was out of high school. I can remember the high school boys would go over there and thump cans in the winter after canning was over.
The stuff in the cans is when if they bulge. And if you push them back, it's all right.
Yeah.
And here's what Janet Brookman wrote. I recall that wagons and trucks were weighed over at the Dennison and Sons elevator, and after weighing, the road was always lined with trucks and wagons between the elevator and the canning factory. Farmers and truckers alike always got a lot of visiting done while they were waiting to be unloaded at the dump on the south side of the husking shed. She said, how I loved the smell of sweet corn back then and still today. I remember too how Mommy and Daddy would worry about someone in a factory getting hurt. Those were such sharp knives used by those cutting away the smut and the worms. I can't remember who sharpened those knives, but I remember watching them being sharpened. I was so impressed, and it was scary how sharp those knives were. I remember wanting to be old enough to work in the husking shed. I did spend a bit of time with a knife one day, but I must not have been very efficient because my job there didn't last very long. She said, oh, what would OSHA say about all that work today? Okay, we've got a lot of people here tonight. I'd like to see a show of hands of how many people worked in the factory. Wow, okay, all right, I gotta count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 14, 15.
Up there. And
Okay,
I worked in there for a while, and
did they come in boxes?
no, they stacked in there. And we had tongs, where they run in and can and just turn around, put them on the track upstairs. And then they store them up there. They get ready to use them, they load them back on that track and then go back down to the machine.
Now, I understand the railroad tracks were right here on this side. That's what it looks
Yeah.
like we can see. So
And,
there was, like an unloading dock there.
yeah. And they went upstairs to be
Right up.
stored. And they built one of the other buildings back there.
Oh, one of the other buildings back here is where they were stored?
You don't see it here now. You go short.
Put them on a track, there was a gravity feed from the boxcar down to the first floor. And then Bill picked them up there and elevated them back up to the filling.
Just single cans all loose?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they were stacked in the cars, and every so often there'd be a partition in to hold them, see.
Okay.
And this rack he's talking about had a handle, I think it holds 10 cans. The one thing he didn't mention is once in a while when one of them tiers of cans fell over, and then, boy,
Well, I can't imagine that they just sit there. I mean, you're talking about can after can just stacked in that box car by
the whole
itself?
box car up now, and when they was running, they went right from the car right up.
And then you just had like a wooden thing that'd pick up
Yeah,
10
like a
cans at
rake,
a time?
with about 10 palms on it, see, lift 10 cans at once and lay it in that track. And then it was gravity feed down to the inside, and then it picks it up and on the belt, see, and took them up to where they filled. There was a machine that went around like this that filled them, see. And sealed them, of course.
How old were you, Charles, when you worked there?
Oh, I think around 17.
16 years or 35.
Do you remember that money meaning a lot to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Teresa.
Yes.
That's where you started, was out there.
Okay.
Right along working at his father.
Started there when I was 16, so he was 35. He worked at 30.
Do we have any farmers here tonight?
Huh?
Do we have any farmers? No, I'm saying farmers that grew corn for the factory.
Well, no, I
Your
picked.
father did?
No, sure. I picked.
All right, we have somebody in the back row. Okay, stand up, tell us your name. Unless you're unable.
haven't told how much we got.
That's what I'd like to hear. Okay.
I don't know, my dad raised seed for one.
Raised seed, okay.
We go out early in the morning and pick that corn.
What's your name? Lauren Johnson? Okay, and your dad's name was?
Yes.
Jess? Okay.
It's so wet.
Yeah.
Say that again, I can't hear. Oh, 38, 40, okay.
Start pans and cook some.
You
What-
got a nickel more an hour than I do.
How much did you make? 30 cents?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was
That's
it
a
like?
nickel more than she got.
What was it like to cook it? What did you do?
Or you just had to watch it and it got so home in time with certain heat, and it went down to the end filler.
Were these like big steamers, or I just can't quite envision it.
Yeah, they
Okay.
was big.
Like hold how many cans?
I don't know, my cans, there was big
They
trees,
was
about 4
probably-
foot wide,
Oh.
about
They
this
was-
high, and they just rolled in there.
Oh, okay.
But it was asking, was there 2 or 3 of them went into a cooker?
When I was up there, they was doing two.
Only 2.
I couldn't remember whether 2 or 3.
Okay.
But they run down, they were doing two that made big sealed cans and filled it.
He didn't tell you how hot a job it was when they blowed off, and he had to get them out too, right?
No, that wasn't bad.
You knew you weren't in heaven anyway, huh?
What did Pearl Whitson do?
I don't know whether Pearl worked there.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did.
I think she worked the shop shed, didn't she?
Okay. Jump to the time to
It's on
the
that
workers.
list you have there.
Yeah. We have a 1946. Here it is. I don't know if you can read this. 1945. This was a newspaper article, and it says the canning factory finished its season, 35,000 cases at 3 o'clock Sunday morning. The quality of the pack is said to be extra good. The names and positions of the workers are reported by Harry Brookman, owner of the plant. So here's the Huskers. Hazel Augustine, well, I'm not going to read them all. Lois Sweeting. There's a Roseberry, Merle Roseberry. Inspectors, we have 5 people here. We have trimmers. We have the cutters. There's a Maud Hendricks. The fillers, 2 people. Working on the cans. We have 4 people here. Stock, that must be stocking in the warehouse, maybe?
What's the Craig? What's the first name?
Joanne Craig.
Okay, that's what she said she did. I invited her up there.
Yeah, we got that to pass around here. I'll start it with Charles there. And stock, there it is. The dump, what did the dump people do?
Dump the car.
Dump the cobs?
From the wagons into a conveyor.
Okay.
They took it in the shed.
Into the husking shed.
There is
And here's the shed superintendent and 2 people, but was that just like supervising the shed? That wasn't the Huskers are somewhere else. What does the shed mean? I wonder. Was what? Well, and then the 3rd floor, we have somebody, a superintendent, someone else. 2nd floor, one of the Silkers on the 2nd floor is Floyd Duro. Is Floyd still here? Yeah, there he is. And a blending tank, a mixing tank, a sealer, 3 people on the line. And here's 2 people working crates. And the cook room, Alfred Wall, superintendent, Marv Elgin, Dwight Caesar, Dick Holman. Front tank and rear tank. So there's your 2 tanks. Robert Ward, Ed Wall, and casing. Quite a few people there.
Charles Matheny.
Charles Matheny, yeah. Stack, 3 people. Engineers, 2 people. The mechanic and the night watch. So that was the 1945, just a couple years.
What? Johnny Bum, my uncle Johnny Bum.
Johnny Bum was one that sharpened those knives. I saw him do it a lot of times.
Well, when I worked putting the cans in the boxes, they called us thumpers. I don't see anything.
Is that what casing is?
Maybe casing.
Maybe, but that's what
Okay,
we were called.
here's the next year's campaign, and we just have I'll just point out a few different labels. We got a shuck pile. Go ahead, next one.
There's a guy here that stacked the shops, Raymond Cuby.
Yeah.
Okay. We're gonna make sure we hear from you here.
Floyd again.
Okay. Floyd Duro Silker. Let's see, what else is different about this season?
John.
Cutters, engineers, casers, the cans, the huskers, inspectors and trimmers. Like I said, that's being passed around. Okay, who else would like to stand up and tell us?
There's your chance to.
Well, I didn't work
Name
in
first.
San Luis. Everybody knows my dad, but I'm the junior. And my dad was probably 16 years old, and Harry Brookman's dad and his brother, I guess I understand. They went down to the farm where I was born, down the old highway, and they walked into a cornfield, and my grandmother always liked to make hominy. It was white corn, and the Brookman brothers walked in and they said, "We're gonna send some guys down here to pick that corn." So they didn't get to make hominy out of that 8 or 10 or 16 rows. I think my dad was probably 16 or 15 or 16 years old.
Thanks, Junior. Mr. Kubik, would you like to tell us about your duty there?
Not much I did but stacked.
Stack the boxes?
No, we stacked the corn husks outside.
And then what happened to the husk piles?
People hauled it away for their animals.
They fed it as fodder or?
It was sold to farmers and it was 15, 18 feet high.
How'd you stack them? Shovels?
You just
There
come
was,
out on the way,
there
or
was
you
an
use the
elevator
fork.
that run the grain up there, and then we just stacked it like on a hay rack load of hay.
Okay.
Do you have a fork then?
Yeah, you had forks.
And wore boots. Remember, they were green, see? Yeah. And you stacked them, and then
But they
it
never
was like
put
this
the
piece.
cobs on there, it was just the shucks.
Just
Cobs went somewhere else.
So then what happened to the husk after they got stacked on the hay racks and
Yeah, I
stuff?
think farmers hauled it off for feed.
Yeah.
Okay, alright.
Harry said that it was sold to farmers and fed to the dairy cows. And he said that the milk collar could tell the minute that they were feeding it because the taste of the milk changed.
No, you bet.
Oh, you bet. Yeah.
For the better? No.
He also said the cows were sold and farmers fed it to their hogs, because the cows were soft and they could chew.
Cobs were in the shop pile though.
Is there anybody else over in this area that wants to stand up and speak?
I want to ask a question.
Okay.
Arnold Planning, and I worked what we call the rear, the cooling tank. Those crates come up out of the cooling tank, and then they started down a ramp and turn a curve. You had to kind of slow them down and move them around the curve so they were thumping. And I worked there in 43, my timesheets are there, and it wasn't anything, well, everybody knows that worked there, you didn't get off till midnight some night. And I was at the end of the tank, so that everybody else was going home before you got through the cooling.
Didn't it take about an hour from to go through that tank?
About that, I'd say. She says an hour, a little over an hour, but it was a pretty long tank. And, but I had a question about, different shifts come in at different times. See, I come in later, and I didn't remember whether I got a call or how I called in for a shift. Like, you call in, and if you're a Husker, you punch 1, and if it's a Cutter, you punch 2. Or is that's before that time. But I mean, did they call you, or did you call in?
Huh?
Did they call you, or did you call in to see what time your shift
Well,
started?
I rolled cans, I don't know how they told me when to be there. You know, I unloaded cans out of the box cart, that was my first job.
Farmers brought the corn in first,
Yeah,
Huskers started, and then the Cutters started, and then it's cooked, and then Husker down the line.
well, we'd go out and pick corn real while it was dark yet and wet, you know, so you wouldn't have to stay in line so long. And then you still had to sit in line quite a while.
What was the victory tax? Anybody know what the victory tax was?
Probably during World War II, they probably.
Yeah,
Yeah, 43, this says.
Okay, this is 60 cents an hour, and do we have the year on that one? And who it was? Margaret Eldred in 48,
Last year.
That's the last year then.
yeah.
Mine was 50 cents an hour, and it was 43.
Somebody's
Okay.
went
I
around.
got 15 cents an hour and 31.
25 cents an hour.
You
If you
spend
stay,
it.
if you stay with them the whole 6 weeks or whatever,
Uh-huh.
you got a nickel.
There's my name.
You got a bonus?
Yeah, that's right.
Where?
Under inspectors.
Did different people make different things, like if you're a Husker, you made one way, Cooker?
I worked there one day.
It had been somebody else.
Must be a different Smith.
It must have been somebody else.
Okay, is there anybody on this side of the room that would like to say anything? Okay, Jim?
Jim Sherman, I was a little younger than the rest of you that was working in the shucking business and all that. I was involved before the canning started. You mentioned the box makers and all that. There's probably there some, I'm Dale's unloading cans, Dale. They would hire, Gabby Reynolds is one of them, and he's one who hired me, and I think maybe Bob Elgin, Lyle Elgin, some of those guys were also the box makers. And I think those 3 box makers, each one had 4 presses. You would square up the box, pull the flaps in, put it over the anvil standing up there, slap the glue on it by hand, pull the press down, and hold the lever there, go to the next one, 4 machines, go back and take the box off, throw them over here. Then those guys hired us kids to come in and take them back in the warehouse and stack them. And we had fun with that, because later in the year, when they started using the boxes out of there, Terry would find that there was caves and little shelters made in these boxes, you know, hideaways. Everybody was guilty of it. But, that, like I say, was before the canning started. But living close to it there, and one of the younger ones of that era, we spent as much time over there off-season in the canning factory when it was closed, because there was no way you could lock everything up. We'd go over there and shoot pigeons out of it and things like that. So we kind of knew the building pretty much by heart too, but I don't remember what that shed was that they were talking about. That was some of my experience. And then it started with my brother Ray and Dale, I'm sure remember, and some of the others. Ray and his wife Mary, and Mary is still living in Walker. They took a two-wheel trailer and made a little lunch wagon. Made sandwiches and sold sandwiches and had pop on ice. And it was across the street from the canning factory there, so a lot of people would go over there and buy their snacks from him.
Across Central Avenue or across First?
No, across the south of the, I believe, yeah.
Okay, south of the factory?
I think it was. But then Ray and Mary bought the hardware, plumbing and heating in Walker about that time, and so that last year, maybe 2 years, I was the business guy, and I had the two-wheel trailer. One night came and we had to have a light out there and plug into his electricity and that, so I have a lot of good memories about it, other than just when it was running, the time that I spent in the canning factory when it closed. And, 'cause I was thinking that the swimming in the tanks was outlawed. Probably still happened, but I don't think it was permitted.
Dell, do you remember Harry telling you that the kids swam in the tanks? Yeah. Maybe it was one of the things that they didn't get caught. How old were you, Jim, when you did the boxes?
Oh, probably 10 or 11.
10 or 11 years old? Did you earn a wage?
Oh, yeah. And we got paid by the box, the same as the guys that were making the boxes. They got paid by each box, so they had to keep track of how many boxes they were making.
Now, I've heard that you had to be 14, and other people say 16 before you got hired there, and
Depends on what time, what
what you did.
area it was.
But Jim, were you actually hired by the canning factory, or was it the guys that,
No, the guys making the boxes.
the guys
hired
making the
kids
boxes hired them,
to
see?
stack 'em for them.
Yeah, that's what I,
Well, there wasn't any child labor laws then.
So in other words, you never got a check from the canning company?
No,
The guys just paid you on the side from their paychecks or whatever?
subcontract.
Yeah, subcontract. Okay.
Was that old poem? The golf links lie so near the mill that almost every day the laboring children can look out and see the men at play.
And then I wanted to ask you, when you served the snacks, did you come at noon and then again at supper? You remember that?
No, it'd be before lunchtime and the rest of the day into the evening,
Okay.
because they took breaks, maybe not off clock like they do
Just
now,
on-
but still, they
On breaks and,
take a break.
okay. All right. All right, let's come over this side of the room. Where should we start? You guys have anything to add? Okay. Floyd, do you have anything to add? You were the silker. How'd you get the silk off? Tell us about that.
A machine does it, and we just kept cleaned up our soap.
It would just kind of brush it or wipe it or?
the Husker,
The silker.
The machine, I don't know how much. And just watch it and keep the
to silk.
throw it out the window where the shucks were. Silk.
Keep the silks out, old silks out, okay. How old were you when you worked there?
That's at 46. I started when
Well, how many years did you work there, do you think?
I think about 5 years.
About 5 years?
4 or 5 years.
So do you remember any accidents happening or anything, I don't know, bad or
Yeah, I took one stage.
what?
Had my hand fast, took one stage.
To a corn what?
Wash that out, you won't see it.
Had-
Change your
Had a
flashlight.
stitch. He had one stitch in
Oh,
his
had a
hand.
stitch.
Can't turn the flashlight.
Harry Brookman said, and I may not get this right, Mary Dufo's father has helped him move a boxcar He went to put the wooden piece under the wheel and lost 2 fingers.
Well, that's good that nobody remembers anybody getting fingers cut off.
Well,
So what tape?
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Ruth, stand up. Ruth Butterfield.
Yes, especially when you were cutting the corn, there were lots of little accidents, and I can remember getting one myself. Sometimes, they all bled. They were major deals, as I remember, but, talking about, my career at the canning factory. I was a junior in high school. I was 15 years old, and my mother had talked to Harry about the job. And so they let me do it, and she gave me some very good advice. She said, now if you take this job, you know, you have to stick with it, and you have to do a good job. Well, she could have saved her words, because the first day I was there, I don't know how many of the older ladies told me that I would have to keep up my end of the bargain. I would have to do my part. I wasn't there, just to draw my money. And, but but the second day, nobody mentioned it, that I wasn't doing my job. So I worked that year, and then the next year, I was promoted. And I went up to where they filled the cans. And that was a much easier job, because you could sit part of the time, and it was cleaner. I don't think anyone has mentioned about what a dirty, lousy job it was, because the corn, I laughed when they said about the starch. Your clothes were just all starch by the time you got home. And we had it all figured out, my mother did, that you went to the basement and she had the tubs around in the basement. And the first tub was you threw your clothes in that tub. The next tub, you took the water and did your own shower, so you could even get to bed, because you would be so dirty and starchy, and that corn would stick to you. So you were well fortified by the time you got home. It was quite a deal. And, but as far as, saying it was really a wonderful thing for the town. It really was, because, it was during the Depression, and I don't think many of you here really know what the Depression was really like, but it was a bad deal. And you were very anxious to get a little bit of money to carry you through. And anyway, but there was one thing I learned, or I learned a lot from that. I learned that I really didn't want to make that my life tour. I was going to figure out to either use my head to do a better job to get somewhere else. So for 2 years, and that was enough.
2 years was enough.
Yeah.
15, 16 years old, you were out of there. Do you remember that being very good money for you, though?
I don't remember much about the money.
Uh-oh.
My mother, my mother took care of the money. She was our cashier at our house, and, I guess got paid quite well for what we were doing in the season. I never complained about it.
Must have been all right with you.
Yeah,
2
well,
years.
It was fine, and you did have, they were long hours. That was one thing. But I didn't have far to go. I just had to go up the hill and around the corner to make it to the
To
work.
get there. Does anybody remember it being hot? It's about a time of year.
Hot, sticky, and you talked about wearing overshoes or something. That floor was always wet. It was.
Never dried.
Yeah, it was a messy deal.
Anyway, turn this off. Can I interrupt just a moment?
Okay.
for a little lesson. There are sound effects of that, but I don't know what happened to them.
Okay, I think we're about up to this row. Dale, do you wanna?
Well, followed up on what Ruth said, how the starch was all over everything, you know, from the corn. Plant had to be cleaned every night after it shut down.
Okay.
You know, and the cleaning crew, then you went to work with the steam hoses and everything. I didn't work at that very long, but that was, you know, that was a hot, dirty job too. But we used steam hoses and just wash it down. But that had to be done after plant was started.
The wee hours in the morning.
Yeah. But the one thing, it hasn't been mentioned yet at all.
Go ahead.
Nobody has asked get the picture on it,
Oh.
or picture of it again.
He's put it away.
He's just shut down.
Yeah.
This one right here?
Nobody asked, what's that big long black thing sticking up there, see? That's the smokestack from the, and that was the heart of the cannon factory. It was a big steam boiler, and they had their own well. That was a good well there. It was a drilled well, where most of town has dug wells. It was a drilled well, so you had to have a lot of water. And if you didn't have steam, the plant didn't run. You had to cook the corn and everything else, see? And there was two guys that practically worked 24 hours a day. Adrian Hand was one of them.
Okay.
I don't know who that was, but there was guys that knew how to run steam engine and stuff, but that was bigger than a steam engine. It was a big steam boiler.
I think I remember that name being listed under the engineer.
And then, you know, and then you sat down, loaded carloads of coal. That's the way they fired it, see?
Okay.
But that was one end of the plant that, you know, nobody paid much attention to, but you had to have the steam.
Beaver Hunter.
Did you have to stoke it and
Fire
keep it
when I was
going
born.
for the next day? I mean,
Oh, yeah, they kept steam up all the time.
yeah, like.
Oh, yeah. Like I say, they practically worked 24 hours a day there.
That was even a steam hoist that moved the cradles of corn out of the cookers and so forth.
Yeah.
And that was a steam hoist.
Dale, Fred Hunter?
Huh?
Fred Hunter, right?
Not at that time, but he might have later.
Well, Floyd said he
Yeah.
never went either.
See, that was in 31. I'm talking about 31.
Oh.
32, about 2 or 3 years, all I worked there, just when I was a kid.
Did it stoker the coal into the boiler, or did they hand shovel the coal into the boiler?
What do you say?
Did they hand shovel it, or did they?
I don't know, I'm sure it was though, but it was chunks of coal.
So it wasn't
any
stoker coal?
No, it was chunks of,
There's lump coal.
Iowa
Lump
coal,
coal.
black smoke
I remember
coal
that.
out there.
Stoker coal would be little pieces.
They said, Harry said that they took the coal off the cars. I don't remember exactly what, about put it over a fence, and then from there it went into the boilers. And the reason they used steam was it was the cheapest. You talk about the well, he said they first started using city water, but then
Couldn't keep up.
the government came out and said that they couldn't do that. He said that was the only regulation that they put upon them, was that they had to use their own well water, they couldn't use city
It was on
water.
account of chlorine, see?
You got to
It
take with
wouldn't
you.
work on the corn.
You know, something else that no one has mentioned is, do you know how many bums made that their home
How many bums made the warehouses their home?
in that canning factory? Yeah.
A lot of them.
Yeah, I used to do, there, you know, in the winter time. Yeah, during the Depression. Yeah. Yeah, the railroads were all over.
They were friendly.
Kenneth, did you wanna say something?
Yeah, the can of corn.
Does anybody remember what a can of corn sold for?
What was the price of the corn? I mean, when it was all done and you went to the store and bought it.
Probably 10 cents.
I don't know what they charged in the store,
wouldn't have been
but
very
my,
much.
my mother used to go, they used to go up, my mom had a pressure cooker and a sealer. And she
Put up
canned
their own.
corn and tomatoes, and she sold a can of corn, was it for 10 cents, Arnold?
10 cents.
10 cents a can to people in Cedar Rapids.
What did the cans cost? Just
I don't know, Arnold, do you know what the
No,
cans
I
cost?
don't know, I don't know.
I can't remember. But she would get, you know, get a lot, she canned a lot of corn. See, it was just like, you know, any can would be. But it was 10 cents.
Jim?
One other thing hasn't been talked about, somebody mentioned how good the sweet corn smells. But you notice the cob pile and the shuck pile and everything was on the north side of the building. That's because the wind usually in the summer is out of the south. And that pile would get pretty rank by the end of the summer. So they washed down the floors and
You forgot the
all
flies.
that cream and all that. It went out into the ditch, run down,
Flies all over the place.
through our goat yard, into the creek, and the creeks would run white in the summertime from the washing off. And of course, there was more water in those days, so it kept it cleaned out. Today they would call it contamination. I think they have big minnows in the creek.
Oh. Healthy minnows in the creek.
Source for the fish.
Yeah.
But Bruce
Anything
said the
else?
flies.
Yeah, and the flies. They'd stick right to you, well fortified with starch and flies.
Sure, once they got it down to you, they stayed there.
Is that well still there that they chiseled out, or?
How's still there, Tom? Is the well still there, isn't it?
Yes, the well is still there, but it's not functional. I think kids have thrown rocks and things down in there. But I will tell you that all the wells in the city were shut down for cleaning. And they hooked onto that canning factory well, and that supplied the whole city for about a week.
When was that?
So, it was good water.
How deep was it?
I'm not sure, 60-some feet, I believe. It wasn't a real deep well. When I got the building, it was like the picture that's been passed around here, frame picture. And that's the way it was, but Harry sold me the 2 tile buildings, and he sold the frame buildings to someone else to tear down. Typically, he didn't get it down on schedule, and eventually we burned what was left and dug a big hole and pushed everything that was left in the hole. And I haven't heard it mentioned what supported the buildings. They were concrete pieces so that you could actually get under the buildings. It was up off the ground. And those were still there when the building was torn down, and we had to get rid of those.
See these?
And some of them, if you get over in that area, you'll see that I've lined the property with them.
Oh.
And most of them, however, I put into that hole that I was talking about. We still have about, I'd say a couple thousand of the cans. If you can tell me how I can profit by them, why,
Do you have any lids?
no lids, that's right, no lids, just the cans. So, and they're still in the original packages. They were, I don't know, maybe 100 in a package, something like that, and they're still in their original packages.
Are they round without a bottom and a lid? Just a bottom on them? Just no
I
lid?
don't have the lid, so they were, but I do have the, it was a hand-operated thing that apparently they used to put the lids on. And I'll be happy to donate that to the Historical Society, because it does have some meaning, I think, to this. I also have some pictures up there just that were taken when I obtained the building and when it was being burned and that type of thing, so if you're interested in that.
Yeah.
This is a good crowd where I might tell a story that I heard not long ago. I think it'll be appreciated. At a football game, a young man was at intermission time, halftime at the football game, he began talking to a more elderly man in front of him. And he began bragging about all the things that we have here today, and he was telling how, he said, in your time, you didn't have anything. You didn't have colored television, you didn't have microwave, you didn't have cell phones, you didn't have any of those things. How did you live? I mean, gee, you just didn't have any of those things. And the man turned to him and said, you're right, son. He said, we didn't have any of those things at all, so that's why we invented them.
Geraldine, you had something else?
Yes, I want to tell you that having lived by the elevator and the canning factory. My senses are all of them. I can smell that sour corn, I can smell the corn that was cooking. I hear the sounds over there when they're cleaning, after the people have gone home and they're cleaning that. They must have used a lot of water and a lot of steam too to clean those machines and everything. But more than that, growing up rural mostly, and went into Center Point the year I started high school, Dad moved to that house. You never saw many lights in Center Point at night. But when the canning factory was running, you looked over there and there were lights, there were a lot of lights. And so that it was like you were in another city, not in Center Point. When the canning factory was running, it was a different time. It was called the canning factory time. That's when it was, it's the season for the canning factory. But all of my senses were used in those very good, happy years of my life, from 13 to 19, 20. Just sitting here listening to it, I just whirled around and around. I remember that if it was rainy, they raised some kind of, I thought they raised them up, I don't know, and covered those windows at night so the rain didn't blow in. Do you know? You couldn't tell from the building, because I don't remember. But I know that they closed them then, but you would know that they're still over there working, because you could hear all these sounds of them working. So at that time, the canning factory in my life, in those ages, and I remember the Depression very well, but the canning factory was the big item, the big thing, the canning factory.
I tried to buy that tank, would have made a beautiful swimming pool, and I tried to buy it, but he wouldn't sell it to me.
What happened to it?
It was turned into scrap, I'd imagine.
Teresa?
That's why the building was being
Yes,
torn down.
when she sat down here beside me, she was telling me a while ago that she could smell all these smells. And she was telling you again tonight, that she could, no matter what, she could smell that, even though it wasn't around there.
Right, right. Very vivid in your memory.
Yeah.
Yes. You have something to say? I don't know your name. You want to add something?
One thing you haven't hit, I worked there in 43.
Okay.
And then when I was out of high school, so I was 17 to 18, 19 years old.
Okay.
About 19 I guess. There was a lot of kids trying to work then. Well, nothing used to make us matter. We was thumping cans. They'd come in on about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, and they had to have help. But we'd been there all day. But it was government regulations that they were too young, they couldn't work only so many hours.
Oh, so there were some restrictions then.
So they come in late and work, then they'd raise cane with us guys that had been there all day.
So what did you do when you thumped cans?
You thump cans. Because the baskets come out of that cooling tank up onto a platform. You had a little stool with a box on it, and you toss those hot cans against your other hand and pile them up in the box.
So you had
Do it
to,
like this, you picked them up here, threw them up your other hand and put them in the box.
oh, it was putting the can in the box.
Yeah. But he
Okay.
didn't put it in like he said. You picked them up, tossed them, and you caught them with this hand and shot them into the box.
That's what I said.
You had a,
Yeah,
Were you
okay, but
barehanded?
he didn't hang on to them, because they
Oh,
were
no.
too hot to hang on to.
And you were barehanded, right?
Oh,
Were you
yes.
barehanded? Okay.
Yeah.
Up to.
put the hot cans in the boxes.
You see, they put them in the box and stacked them and worked all winter, labor them, see.
Yeah, because when we got done thumping them, you slap the lids on top of them and send them down the rollway to the shed. They was going away for them to work on in the winter time.
And what's your name?
Donald Mills.
Donald Mills. Any relation, Bill?
My father.
Okay, who haven't we gotten back here? We need to talk to the timekeeper, I think. Irma? Stand up, you got a tiny voice.
And I can remember being on Harry's
how many hours a day did you work? You weren't there 8, 10 hours, or were you? No. Yeah. And you did this out of their home?
On their living room floor.
Okay.
Did you get a sheet that they'd sign, saying when they came to work? The hours?
So just like the timesheets that we passed around, you paid off of those and paid the bills?
I thought it was great. Moved up here and I thought it was fun.
That was fun. How old were you?
I was about 22. And they needed, and I wanted to work the line once to see what they did, and so we put lids on the cans. And worms would once in a while go through there. I always think about that.
Okay. There were worms in the cans?
Well, once in a while.
You're a little team with your large.
Still allowed so many more than like.
So everybody heard that. She still remembers the worms floating on top of the cans. Remember one day that she worked there?
They had a screen about this long with a handle on, you'd go along and skim them worms off and shake them on the floor.
So that was somebody's job, to skim the worms off the top of the can.
I did that for a while and I got sick of it.
And you don't buy cans.
He said that was, somebody said that was flavor.
Irma says she still looks for the worm on top of the can when she opens the can. Lois, do you guys have anything to add? Do you have anything else to add? What? In the back row there? You say, what did you work at? Is your name, what's your first name?
Johnson,
Johnson, okay. Emily? Okay.
I run a Husker.
That's what I heard. I heard this story.
I can't hear you.
I heard this.
I was, well, you said it closed in 48, and I remember going over, I mean, I never worked there, because I would have only been 8, but to me, when I watched the women standing there and this corn was going by, I thought it looked like those windows, like if it was hot, they opened up a lot more than they do, but maybe they didn't.
They had shutters like, something.
Oh, in the shucking shed, it'd be a big,
Pull them up.
they just raised up the big boards, John.
Oh, okay, well, that's what I
And then they
remember.
let it down to close it, but.
Yeah, because you could just look, I mean, you saw the women, they were standing there and they were working, but the whole side of the building was open. It was a
Oh, was
Well,
this,
see, I'm looking at that picture.
is this the husking shed then?
Yes. Okay, that's what I remember. And I don't know why we were there, why Mother was there. Maybe they needed something from the hardware store. And I got to go along.
Would you stand up and so we can get it on the camera? I'd like to hear you talk about what the husking was like.
Think back.
You probably had a bushel basket,
Oh, no.
a corn, or
no.
just in a pile?
No, there was where they dumped the corn, and then there was like an elevator
Okay.
near the corn, and come up high. And then up here by it, there was another one that come down to you, and then where the ears, you had to grab the ears as they come
That's
down
what I
and
watched,
lay them in that husker. You had to keep track
Okay, so
of
you put them in the machines.
Mechanical husker.
I never heard how many ears was made in there.
In this husking shed, the corn was elevated clear at the top, and then there was a slide like this, and the air could come through in between, and the corn laid in there, and then worked down as they.
But this picture says
Oh, that's by hand, that's.
yeah, 1911, this was by hand.
All these pictures are way before our time.
Okay.
They don't, that doesn't
I
look
worked
like.
on a Husker too. You remember,
Sean was there at my
we
time.
had to put those ears in with the stock in the ground.
We had to put them in with,
The big in first.
yeah,
I couldn't remember which way we did.
one way or the other,
Years ago.
But they all had to go in the one way.
I know, they had to go one way, but I was trying to remember which way it was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you had to just
truck and the rest of the year.
Okay, go ahead.
I've got something to add to the husking. My friend Marge and I were huskers, and at night, you know, it would get real late. We would be on for a long time, and so her mother and my mother said they would come and take our place. And they had quite a time. They really enjoyed it, but that was quite a deal, watching them.
Watching them take your place, because it was getting too late, huh? Well, that says something. Was it you still on the clock then?
What?
Were you the one still on the clock? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so another subcontractor.
What?
You got paid for your mother's work.
We got paid for our mother's work, yeah.
Just talking about, and all the identification was, it had a gunny sack in the basket. It was just a part of the basket. So we pulled them off to one side because we figured there was something special about it. And it sat there for quite some time. And then all of a sudden we found out that somebody did dump them and they were in the stack.
What year was that?
43.
43?
Yeah.
Well, we put some through in 42. Back there in baskets, 2 little root baskets, but there was only about two regular packs of cans, I should say. And Mrs. Brookman had sent hers through there, and we sent them to the shed. We didn't know the difference.
Well, there wasn't any identification. The sack was laying in there, so we just figured. I pulled it to one side, but nobody said anything. I think it sat there for a day before anybody.
So they didn't do that to us, they just sent it through. So when it come up, we shipped it to the warehouse. I think they found 1 case out of the 2.5 that we put back there.
Was the warehouse
1
heated?
case out of the 2.5.
Does anybody know if the warehouse was heated in the cold of winter?
Yes. The cans were piled, the cans were stacked at the center of the building, with a space along the outside walls, so the heat would go around them. The one shed wasn't, and that shed was the one they started labeling first.
Okay, are we kind of exhausting all of our comments? If somebody has something that they'd like to say and they don't get to say it and they think of it when you get home, call me up, call one of the Historical Society people. You know, get the message to us, we'll write it down if you just want to talk on the phone, because we'd still love to hear whatever else you have to say.
I'd like to say something, and I don't know how to say it so everybody understands it. But from 1930 to 1936, along in there, people were hard up, and I mean, if you're younger, you don't realize how hard up you were. And that cannon factory, the women that worked over there sometimes, that was the money for the year. I think Ruth will testify to that. That was the money for the year, and that kept a lot of families, it was good for the whole town, because there wasn't any money. And I know my folks and my brother and I, there's times there wasn't a dollar in the if there was a dollar in the hospital, see? And that was one way that it made the town maybe a little better than some of the other towns, and it was income there through those real hard times. And I want to say they were hard times.
That's a very good point to make, you know, what a big impact that this really had, you know, on our merchants uptown and, you know, for Center Point to prosper and, you know.
They talk about the hard times, Mr. Brookman told that for 2 years, basically, I assume during the 30s, they lost $2 a case on every case of corn that went on there.
No, but they sold it for 10 cents a can, see, like,
Just because they couldn't get the money for the product like they could.
Nobody else had money. No. I mean, you know, the canning factory kept the town going, but also the company didn't make money for 2 years either.
but it did, it kept the town going, it did.
I just want to add one more thing. What we've got here tonight, and we can stay as long as John will let us stay, but Dell has a 45-minute tape of Harry talking, and you know we can put it in and listen to it tonight, or we can come to a meeting that we have at a later date if,
Why don't you make another day?
well, we can do it both ways. Yes,
Nobody
Geraldine?
has mentioned that worked there about how when the special corn came in, then they cleaned everything all up and we did the special pack. And that was labeled Del Monte or whatever.
What was
But-
special about that pack?
Well, that was, I guess, field corn, sweet corn that was viewed as a little better than the normal. That's all I can tell you. You know, different variety, you know, and probably gotten at just the right time and all that, but then they would say, we're gonna stop now, everybody stop, we're gonna clean up, we're getting ready, we're gonna do a special pack.
Okay.
And it would be then labeled, one of the names, you know. the
Brand
trade
name.
names Rather than.
Brand name
Yeah,
corn.
brand name rather than Harry's corn. That's it. And that was a highlight. Gee whiz, we're doing something special.